Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The goal today is to provide you some overview and some information about the startup for September 9th and the Tenino School District. We'll start with some introductions. I'm Joe Belmonte, I'm the superintendent. I'll go ahead and ask each administrator who you can see on the screen to introduce themselves. We're doing this in sort of a panel format. We'll go through some commonly asked questions that the community has asked, and I'll ask different people on the panel to weigh in as we go along. So let's start introductions. Mr. Neal.
Hi, my name is John Neal. I'm principal at Tenino Middle School. Excited to be here and excited to see some of our parents over that have logged in and some of our parents that are going off to the high school. So John at the middle school.
Parkside.
Hello, I'm Brock Williams, principal at Parkside Elementary School, home of the Penguins. We are the preschool through second grade school here in Tenino, and we are here to serve you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Hi, assistant principal here at the middle school along with Mr. Neal, the principal. Excited to see your kids on Zooms and in other type of formats. Here to help with that, with whatever way we can, and glad you guys are here to join us.
TES.
Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie Harrington. I'm the principal of Tenino Elementary School, home of the Tigers. We've been working hard all summer to get things set up for you for Remote Learning 2.0, and we've got some schedules to share with you and some information to share, and I'm just really eager to get this thing going.
Ms. Pereira.
Hi, everybody. Lisa Pereira, principal at Tenino High School. We can't wait to meet all the new freshmen that are joining us this year at THS, and we miss our 10th through 12th graders so much. Can't wait to see them, and thanks for joining us today.
Mr. Hodgson.
Hey, I'm Randall Hodgson, the assistant principal at Tenino High School. I'm excited to serve our kids even in these kind of weird times, but we're going to get that education that they need and help them out.
And Student Services.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Bash, Assistant Superintendent. I oversee student services and student support programs, including special education. And so looking forward to addressing some information a lot of you have about special needs and this new start we're going to have, along with some questions. So welcome.
And we don't see her face, but Corey Leach is joining us. She's helping facilitate the webinar, and Corey Leach is the executive assistant in my office. So welcome, Corey, as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I think first I want to acknowledge to everybody that the blinding flash of the obvious is that these are different and difficult times for everybody. I just can't imagine how hard it is for students who aren't going back to school, and for families who have to kind of figure out the logistics and how this is all going to work. And so what we're hoping to do today is provide some information and at least relieve some of that uncertainty that is out there. I do believe that every single principal and administrator and the teachers at each building have worked really hard to do a much better job this year than we did in the spring. I think we did okay in the spring, pivoting as quickly as we had to do and closing school and moving forward. You know, as we look at other districts around us, I think we did okay. But I know that I could speak for everyone that we could do better, and we will do better. And so hopefully some of the answers to some of these questions will get at that. I really feel good about what we're planning to do and the plan that we have. But I would acknowledge that really as good as we're going to get on remote learning, it won't be as good as being there in person. So we are hoping to have some return to normalcy at some point. And I wish I knew when that was, but I don't. So we'll move forward. This is webinar that has a question and answer feature. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A, and I believe those participants can go ahead and select that and type in a question. I'm going to go through all our standard questions that have already been asked first. If we have time, we'll go through the questions that you've posted in the webinar. If we don't get to your question, we'll go ahead and post that on our FAQ, which we're going to post on our website and the different social media venues that we have. I also need to just let everybody know, although if you're a participant and not on the panel, it won't affect you, but this will be recorded, the webinar, and that also, the whole webinar will be posted and put on the website for anybody to view at a later date. Let's see, I think I got to all of them. So give you context, as you all know, that we did start and have a pretty good plan to reopen. We were planning on reopening school in person. And about 3 weeks ago or so, the county health department came down with what they call a strong recommendation that schools not reopen in-person instruction in the fall. They used several metrics to make that decision, and they look at things like hospitalization, transmission rate, the hospital capacity in the county, and also the rate of positivity. So how many positive cases there are per, what percentage of positive cases there are per test. And then the other thing they do look at is the number of cases we have per 10,000 people in the county. So right now, the superintendents in Thurston County meet with the health department every Wednesday and get an update and find out where we're at. And right now, I would say last Wednesday, they indicated that we weren't making the standard in 3 of the 5 categories that they look at. So they also will look at us having a basically 4-week window where the trends are going down and that we're starting to make progress in each of those areas before they would let us reopen. One of the questions is, how long will schools be closed? The initial order from the health department is through November 13th, which is the first quarter. November 13th, I think, will come quicker than we think. What we don't know is when they will make that decision. Will they make it on the 12th, or will they make it on the first part of November? We have not gotten that information yet from the health department. We do know what the metrics are that I talked about, but we don't know when that will happen. I will say that if we do get the go-ahead, it will take us a little bit of time to pivot back to in-person instruction from online. So it won't happen the next day, just as to be completely transparent about that. And then the next question is, what is the plan to reopen schools if we're allowed to by the Department of Health? Well, prior to the shutdown, the board, the Tenino School District Board of Directors, approved a plan that we have for reopening, and that plan included all students K-5 coming to school every day. We would take every teacher that we have at the elementary level and assign them a class, because we have to maintain social distancing to make that work. So it'd be small class sizes, but we'd have all of our teachers engaged in that. And the board was also committed to adding staff to the elementary schools, both Parkside and the elementary, to make that happen, because I think the value is we want kids in school, and we think that they want to be in school and they would do better in school than maybe being at home, left to their own devices, both literally and figuratively. students in the secondary, grades 6 through 12, they would go on an A-B hybrid schedule, coming 2 days a week and having 3 days a week to work remotely on their assignments. So that's the plan, that when we pivot to online, or not online, in person, I should say, instruction, we will go back to our original reopening plan and go from there. And I say all this knowing that if we do get to reopen and come face-to-face or in person, there might be some modifications if we get certain direction from the health department. I don't know what that would be, but it's just something we have to keep in mind. One of the questions that families have had is, do I need to register my students for remote learning or for online learning? The answer is yes and no. No, if you're currently enrolled in Tenino School District, you don't have to do anything else. You're on the books. You know, we always ask you to make sure everything's updated in Skyward, but beyond that, you don't have to do anything. Certainly, if you're new to the community or new to the school, we'd ask you to make sure you're registered at that school. On the FAQ, when it comes out, there'll be links to some of these things, like the approved plan for the reopening and the registration. So that will be on the reopening piece, or the FAQ piece when we do it. One of the big questions and one of the big lessons learned from the spring is the idea of a learning management system, or what is the system we're using to communicate with kids and parents. We heard loud and clear from parents and families that we had too many of those systems or too many of those programs. So what we have done is gone to what's called Google Classroom, and that will be our learning management system. So all communication related to assignments, tests, anything, the lessons and when they will happen is all done through Google Classroom. Let's see, make sure I don't miss anything on that. We're really happy with that we have a training component that's going to be there for staff and students about how to use Google Classroom. And one of the features that we have come down to is if you, as a parent or a community member, you have a student at Tenino School District, you can select how often you want to be updated about your child's progress or your children's progress in the school district. So you can choose, I want to get something every week, I want to get something every month, or I don't want to get anything at all. So you have that range of options. And we as a district have agreed, each school, in Friday evening, I don't remember, we haven't set an exact time, but on Friday evening, every teacher will have put in what the assignments are for the next week, what the projects are, the assessments, when the live instruction will occur, when the recorded stuff will be available. So if you're a parent and you have 2 or 3 kids in the system, you'll get one email that says, here's the plan for next week, and you'll have all your kids on that one email. So instead of you getting, if you have a kid at the middle school and the high school, instead of getting 14 emails from different teachers plus an elementary teacher, you're going to get one email with the whole list of what that student will be expected to do and learn in the upcoming week. We do ask that students log into Google Classroom daily. That's part of our accountability piece to make sure that kids are engaged in the process. Another question that we frequently get is, will my child be issued a Chromebook? And if so, when will they be distributed? Yes, each student, K-12, in the Tenino School District, as we've had in the past, will be assigned a Chromebook. They will all be able to take them home. And the distribution will be done. Each school's got a slightly different schedule, but they've got a plan for that. And sometime this week, you're going to get that information about when that will happen. Then the other thing to say is if you do have a device currently at home, you're certainly welcome to use that. but the Chromebooks are set up to integrate with our systems pretty seamlessly. So we'd encourage people to take advantage of that resource. Will there be a Chromebook fee this year? That was one of the questions. The answer is no, although families will be responsible for the care and the return of the Chromebook. It's not a gift. You have to return it after a student moved on or you moved out of the area. We'd ask you to return it to the school district. One of the questions was, what if my child or his family has an issue with the Chromebook? Is it, if it breaks or if we have connectivity problems? In the FAQ, I'm not going to give you all the info now, but there'll be both a line you can call, a phone number, and then an email you can access if you have any problem with from the technology. Let's see. And I believe Nick sent out something to, Nick, the tech guy, sent out something to families in the last day or so. Is that correct?
You sent earlier today.
Oh, it's earlier today. So there should be something in your inbox if you haven't looked at it yet. One of the questions we have, and one of the concerns we have as a district, is that some families, for whatever reason, either they live in an area that doesn't have connectivity, they can't afford it, or they're just not set up for that. The online process, the remote learning process, is going to demand that we engage with students through the Chromebook and the technology. We're really going to limit the amount of paper packets that are being sent out to families. So if that's the case, we do have a funding source that we're able to get people hooked up with some internet connectivity. So depending on where a family lives, there's a couple or three options we have. If you live in, for example, the Tenino telephone service area, we have an option of getting you hooked up through Tenino telephone. There are different areas in the district that have no connectivity through Comcast or Tenino telephone. We would be able to provide a hotspot for those Chromebooks. And then there's other areas that may just be able to be hooked up via Comcast. So there's three options. And if you put in a request or let us know that you need that support, then somebody from technology will get a hold of you individually and work out the connectivity for you. So I think this will be really important. We don't want any of our families to not have the option. Another option we do have, if you as a parent don't want a hotspot or you don't want internet hooked up at your residence, there at each school, we've boosted the Wi-Fi so that if you were in the parking lot or outside of a school, you could be picking up the Wi-Fi signal in front of those schools. And I have heard, and I don't know if it's still the case, that there is a hotspot outside of Timberland Regional Library in downtown in Tenino. One of the questions we have received from folks is, why should we do the online program in Tenino? And I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one of the big reasons is what we're trying to do is have an online program that essentially is the same curriculum and content and standards that you would get or your students would get if they were at the building in person. And why that's important is because when we do pivot, I'm being optimistic, when we do pivot to in-person instruction, there won't be a gap. There won't be well, I was doing this over here and now I have a totally curriculum here. We're hoping that will create a more seamless transition from an online program to an in-person program. So we think that's really important. While you're enrolled in Tenino School District, you have the ability when we have a start of athletics or extracurricular, you'd be able to participate in those activities, where if you're at a different district, you would not be able to do that. And then, you know, Tenino is a great town and a great city and a great community, and we want to keep people connected to our community, and we think that's really important as well. Okay. One of the things that a lot of people ask about this whole online learning piece is what is my student schedule? How do we kind of navigate that schedule? And for us, I think from the high level philosophical kind of piece of this for families is, for us, flexibility is going to be really critical for kids to be successful in this model. We want kids to be successful, and importantly, we want families to be successful. So students will be able to access live instruction, whether it's a grade level or content area. But they also, if for some reason they can't meet the live instruction, those lessons that are live will be recorded. And so if a student can't make the 9 o'clock social studies lesson, then they'll be able to watch it at a slightly different time remotely, and that will all be in the Google Classroom, for example. So we would drop the recorded version in the classroom for the kids to access. So we want kids to have those opportunities. In addition, every teacher will be scheduling what I'm calling office hours, that they would be available to support kids either in a small group setting or an individual setting around their learning. So that would be really important. Detailed information will be coming out on the daily schedules and what it will look like at each school. They're all slightly different. Parkside definitely is going to look different than the high school, and kind of there's a spectrum in between there. So this week, I think on Thursday, Parkside and TES, the elementary, will be dropping their schedules and their information to families. And on Wednesday, it will be the middle school and the high school. That information will be going out. I'm going to ask Mr. Neal if he would jump in here and kind of talk about at least what's the example at the middle school. How might this look? And if you could share with the people on the webinar what that might look like.
Yeah, sure. As Joe said, we jumped into this pretty quickly after the health department made their declaration that we wouldn't be returning to school in any format. But what we really wanted to do was rethink what our schedule could look like. Really looking at it in an online, through the lens of an online school versus a brick and mortar school. And what we have done was frame up our week around content areas instead of around sections. So, for example, on Monday, we have math, social studies, choir, and art. And rather than assigning a student a specific section that they must attend, we're going to give students 4 opportunities to Zoom in live if they wish to get support at any time that works best for the student or family. I know, having my own middle schooler at home, that sometimes things don't always go as planned when I'm off at work and she's home alone. So what we really tried to do was provide the most flexibility possible to get the online support needed for for student and family engagement. So when you think about it, it's kind of not thinking about English or math or science as you're in first period science, but you're in 7th grade science, and you have several opportunities to get live support that meets the needs for you and your family. And the way we framed it out, and again, like Joe said, this will be coming to you on Wednesday, is that each day, Monday, Wednesday have the same content, Tuesday, Thursday have the same, and then Friday has content as well. And this system even allows us to offer some live sessions in the evening. I've had several teachers that are planning on offering live sessions in the evening. That's really hard to do in kind of that period-based model. I'm not saying the period model is not great. There's a lot of schools that are doing it, but we thought this framework meets the needs of our families the best here at TMS. So one more thing, for example, our teachers would load their recorded lessons on Friday, and that will be a district-wide expectation. Students and families can work on those on their own time, and then choose the sections that work for them during the week to receive live instruction or get questions answered or have peer feedback. So again, we'll have office hours just like the other schools, but I really do think that it's a different way of looking at it. And I think it's a way that gives you and your students flexibility in engaging with this process the best you can. We know that this isn't the best way to do school, but we have learned some lessons from the spring, and I think we built them into our schedule leading up in the fall. So we're excited about getting started, but we'll have that letter going out on Wednesday. Joe, is there anything else you'd like me to talk about?
I think that's good. Thank you, John. I think when I think about it, and I think about when my children were school age, I know I had two daughters, and one daughter would have been very meticulous about making sure she met each one of those periods and went through the schedule every day. And I had another daughter I have another daughter that would be a little more free with her schedule. She would like to, well, I'll watch it remotely this day and I'll watch it live this day, and she'd do the work, but she'd do it on her own terms. So I think all our kids are different, and we're going to try to make those accommodations wherever we can. All right. One of the questions we have relates to elementary. There'll be art or music or PE provided at the elementary level. And it'll be just like, I would say, quote unquote, regular year. There'll be those activities will be at Parkside in the elementary. Obviously, it'll be done remotely, and there'll be a combination of live instruction and activities as well. I will say, to be honest, when we pivot back to in-person instruction, and at the elementary, one of the ways to get every kid at school every day, we will be using, all those folks will be teaching class. So at that time, we wouldn't have necessarily a specific specialist when we go back to in-person instruction. But we're not there yet right now. Okay. There is a question, how will different content areas like band or woodshop or welding be handled? There is an opportunity, and I know John Bash is going to talk about this a little bit later. We have the opportunity and the ability to bring very small groups of kids, up to 5 students, into buildings, starting with some of our more at-risk kids, our special ed kids who are in special ed programs all day, or if we had kids on McKinney-Vento, which is homeless students. We have those abilities to bring those students in, and we'd be able to bring students in for specific content areas or areas where they really need to be on campus or in person to, for example, either meet the standard of the classroom, or if there's specialized equipment. So I'll use the example of woodshop or welding. It's really hard to teach welding or woodshop if you can't use the equipment. And certainly we don't want to do that remotely. That I think could be a problem. So it may be a case where there's a very limited number of kids on a schedule that would be able to come in and work with the instructor in a small group setting. That won't happen right out of the gate, like September 9th, 10th. We're going to take some time to make sure we get this thing organized in terms of there's transportation issues, there are scheduling issues and equity issues where we need to make sure that all kids have an opportunity to get in. Let's say we have 20 kids in a welding class. Well, they all have to have equal opportunity to get in there. So that will take a little time to figure that out. We want to make sure we're doing it in a safe and really thoughtful manner. So there's more to come on that, but that's a really good question of something we want to get kids in whenever possible, but we want to do it in a safe manner. So more to come on that. So one of the questions is, how will students earn credit towards their high school graduation requirements? Well, students will be scheduled into courses that are part of their high school and beyond plan in order to meet those requirements. Students have either incompletes from last spring because of the situation, or they have credit deficiency. They're not quite on track. They will have the opportunity to complete the necessary assignments. And there's a variety of ways we're going to do that, either working with teachers directly and tutoring, or maybe some online classes that are really specific to credit retrieval. Lisa or Rand, do you have anything to add to that generally?
Just in general, I mean, they're earn credit in the same way that they would otherwise. They'll be meeting the standards through the remote instruction. And like Mr. Belmonte said, Mr. Hodgson and I have been working on a plan to get any of those incompletes finished and working with teachers. So we're confident with the schedule that we've built too, that students will have plenty of time to work on that separate from any classes that they are concurrently taking. So we're confident that we're going to be just fine with the kids earning credit.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we've had is, so how will we go about contacting my student's teacher if I have any questions? How do I get a hold of them? So there'll be a couple of ways. One is I'll go back to Google Classroom. That'll be the primary focus communication tool between students and parents, especially around assignments and things like that. You'll have email addresses, and you simply can call the school office. If for some reason, heaven forbid, that you weren't getting the response you need from a teacher, I would encourage you to call the school office and say, hey, I need to get a hold of Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and can you have them call me? And we'll get you a quick turnaround on that. We want to make sure we're really customer service focused on this. And if that's not happening, please contact the school principal. Don't hesitate on that one. There's a couple of questions related to IEPs and 504s and special services. So John Bass, do you have that in front of you, or can I ask you to address that?
I do have that in front of me, so
Okay, thank you.
I will go ahead. Yeah, so the first question is, my child has an IEP or a 504 plan. What resources are in place to help them be successful remotely? And so we're working closely with our teachers and our staff that oversee the 504 programs and plans for each student at each school. And the idea is, just like Joe has described around a weekly plan, that we would also have plans that are coordinated with what students are experiencing in their general ed program, but aligning those experiences to their individual plans. And because in the case of IEPs, for example, a remote model of instruction likely doesn't exactly match what the IEP says because it was developed with on-site services in mind. We do anticipate, like last spring, that we're going to work with each family to figure out, okay, what are the most essential goals in the IEP? And given the constraints we're working with, what is the best possible way for us to meet the needs of all of our IEP students and our Section 504 students in a remote model. And so I know many families have already been contacted, and some of them have been asked this question: if the district was able to provide any on-site services, as our superintendent mentioned just a few minutes ago, is that something you would be interested in, so that we begin to get an idea of how many kids we would serve in a model like that. We are not prepared to start the year with on-site services in place for many of the planning reasons that have already been mentioned. Part of it is getting a clear read from each family on who would participate in that. And then we're taking a look at our facilities, the space that we do have available to serve kids in small groups, the staffing that we would need to organize and coordinate, including, and this is another question that's been asked, our therapists. So the question that we're receiving from some families is, how would therapy services be provided? And again, our plan is to coordinate special services, both instruction and therapy services, with the services students receive. And if we are able to provide on-site services eventually, and that is our plan, we would also coordinate that with each family. And part of the consideration process for that is also transportation services. So we have to coordinate several pieces all at once, and we're still kind of building the pieces of that puzzle and working as quickly as we can. But I want to reassure all of our families that the nature of those programs is that the parents in particular are key members of the 504 and IEP teams. And before we land on any final decisions regarding the program for each individual child, parents need to be part of that process. So if you haven't been contacted yet, you will be by your child's case manager. And in those individual conversations, you're going to get a lot more detail than we're providing tonight regarding your child's plan. And I think that answers the questions we've been getting so far. Anything else, Joe, you'd like me to speak to?
No, I think that's good. I think the key is we're going to work with each family and each student on an individual basis to make sure their program needs are being met. So that will take a little bit of time, given the number of students. We did have a question pop up, and I want to respond to it. And the question is, will my student have to be online at a specific time, or will they be able to work on their own schedule? I have seen something about having to be online daily to be counted, quote unquote, at school, but I'm not sure if that means a specific time or just log in during the day. The answer is, one of the reasons we're doing flexibility is your student is not tied to, by 9 a.m. they have to zoom into this particular class. I think the key phrase I would use is engagement. So that's why earlier I mentioned that if a student logs in to Google Classroom to find out their assignments or to turn something in or whatever the case, that's going to count as engagement. If a student turns in at work during the week, that's engagement. So if they'll have to log into Google Classroom to watch a recorded lesson, that will be considered engagement. So there's lots of ways we can track engagement, and as attendance, essentially it's equivalent. But the goal is, if we have a high schooler that's watching little kids at home while mom's at work or whatever the case, they may be doing their schoolwork at 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So the key is to be flexible. As long as kids are engaged, students are engaged, sometime during the day or sometime during the week, we'll be counting that as engagement. So I think we shouldn't worry too much about a student having to be at a certain place at a certain time every single day or during the day. Now, there may be times when a teacher has office hours or they know they're going to be available to support. They may communicate with the student, hey, can you Zoom in at 10 o'clock and we'll work on this math problem, or whatever the case may be. That'll be an individual thing that we hope kids honor that scheduling as well. So hope that answers that question. Let's see, other questions? There is a question about open house. Will we be doing open house at the schools? And there'll be a variety of ways that's going to happen. I do know at the middle school and high school, it'll be more of a virtual open house. I'll ask Mr. Harrington to talk a little bit about what Parkside and the elementary are going to be doing.
Yeah, traditionally we have an open house where everybody comes in, and this year in these circumstances, we're not going to be able to do that. Instead, we're going to be scheduling 30-minute parent-teacher conferences. So a meeting with the classroom teacher and a family member and a student, and that'll be an opportunity. That's going to take place the first 3 days of school, September 9, September 10, and September 11. We're doing it, both schools are doing it a little bit differently, but you will be receiving information about scheduling that from your classroom teacher here this week. And I think Parkside has begun that process, and I know we have. And that'll be a great opportunity to look at the schedule, to meet the teacher, probably most importantly, to form that connection with the teacher, and let your child see his or her new teacher, and then also talk about some practical issues like the schedule and materials, classroom materials, and exactly when and what's the best means to communicate between home and school. We will be providing a Zoom option if that is the best way to go. And we're excited about it. I think it's going to really, really pay off for us in terms of communication and clarity and connection. So that's our plan.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Mr. Williams, anything to add to that?
Mr. Harrington pretty much nailed it. Teachers will be contacting you starting on Friday, and we will try to wrap that up by the September 2nd to finalize when we are doing our parent-teacher conferences with each parent. So expect phone calls starting after Friday, and we hope to have those all signed up so you can plan ahead by the 2nd of September. Looking forward to seeing all of you.
Thank you. One of the questions we had is about food service and meals. Will we be providing meals while we're in a remote and online mode? So there's a couple of pieces to this. Certainly anytime there's kids on campus, we'll be making sure that they have the ability or the availability to get a breakfast or lunch. So that will happen. That will be the smallest part of our service. We're going to continue the grab and go program that we had this summer. Just kind of give you context, over the past few months, since March 20th or so, or earlier that we started this program, we've served close to 50,000 meals to Tenino families. I think it's been very successful. So the grab and go meals will continue at the same 3 locations. One location is Tenino Middle School, one is at the Violet Prairie Fire Station, and the other is at the Bicota Community Center. And related to meals, one of the questions and one of the things we had the ability to do this spring and summer is provide a free meal to any school-aged child that came up to get a meal, both breakfast and lunch. And will we be able to continue the free meals moving forward? Unfortunately, the answer is no. This is regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have not extended the waiver that allowed the district to provide free meals. So we'll go back to just like if a kid was in school, they would either have to pay for a breakfast or a lunch or milk, or if they were on a reduced plan, they would pay the reduced price, or if they're on free, they would get the free meal. And so all that information will be on the FAQ, and the link to any application for free or reduced lunch would be on there as well. But the federal government, their value is that kids go back to school face-to-face, so they're not providing any waivers for that at this point. So yeah, I would encourage families to apply for the free and reduced lunch if you feel like that's something you need. One of the other questions is, will the Boys and Girls Club be available to families? If so, what are the hours? Yes, short answer is yes. The Boys and Girls Club will be open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, beginning September 8th. They have capacity for 50 students at the elementary school and 12 teenagers in the teen center. There is a cost because it is a childcare situation as opposed to just after school. It's $115 a week per student. In the FAQ and on the website and on our social media, we'll put the link to the Boys and Girls Club website and registration. So hopefully people will take advantage of that. It's been a long time since my kids were in daycare or anything, but apparently that's a reasonable price. I don't know that anymore. So let's see. One of the questions is, will students be able to participate in sports or other extracurricular activities? The short answer is not at this time. The health department is basically said we should not have extracurricular activities at school. The league, the state league organization, they control the sports. All the sports seasons have been pushed back and shortened, and the hope that we will return to school. And I just received an email right before we came into the webinar about that. And it looks like the soonest, so the soonest we would be able to start any type of sport activity would be in late December. That's that first season for basketball and wrestling, cheerleading. Then football is pushed out to February 17th through May 8th. And things like tennis, fast pitch, track and field, baseball, boys soccer would start April 26th and go to June 26th. So right now, there are going to be no competitions until after December 27th. And that's assuming the health department approves us going back to school in an in-person mode. I'm sorry, what?
January is the soonest first month.
Oh, Coach Joe's clarified my misreading of his email. Sorry, Joe. January would be the soonest for sports starting. So. Okay. One of the questions, will there be support services, mental health or social emotion support services for students or families who are in need, and who do we contact? I would say if families or students are in need of those types of supports, there are resources available both internally through the school district and externally through different kinds of partnerships we have. So I think the first step is for families to contact either the school principal, or they can contact John Bash at Student Services, and then we would refer you out to the appropriate resource. So there will be support, and depending on the student and depending on the family and what their needs are, we'll kind of tailor that and kind of get you towards the appropriate piece. John, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add Tracy Bray is our family support liaison, and so occasionally when we get those calls, Tracy's job is to contact the family and gather more details if needed to make sure that we're getting families connected to the very best resources based on the situation. So Tracy Bray is also involved in that process.
Thank you, John. We'll put that in the FAQ and put that on our website. Let's see. Will buildings have office hours to go in and make payments or pick up materials or things like that if they're unable to do that so online? The answer is yes. It will look different. There's been some reductions in office staffing coming up this year, so the hours will look differently, but buildings will communicate what those office hours are once they get locked in. I think we talked about attendance, that it's really about engagement and about kids engaging in the learning process. And I think I'm towards the end. There was a question about checking out books from a school library. Brock, why don't you talk about what you guys are doing at Parkside?
All right. Well, thankfully, we have a great technology department and great library people. They have been working over the summer to create a way where you as parents can log in, check to see what books are available within each school's library system. So for Parkside, you would be able to go in, log in, reserve books, and then we will set up times when students or families can come pick those books up curbside here at school. Those details will be sent out to you at a further date or discussed at parent-teacher conference time.
Anybody else have a library plan, or is that to come here soon? All right. Let's see. I had one other question that popped up. Someone asked about U10 soccer. Is that still available? I do not know. Does anybody know that? Mr. Cheerhart, if you're on the line, you could text Corey or something, let her know. I don't know about the community soccer programs. I believe TCYFL may be canceled, but that's the last thing I heard.
I have a question about band and choir, how it looked like at high school.
Okay, there was a question about band and choir at the high school and middle school. How will that be handled? Right now, I think, and actually, I think I might ask, I don't see him on the line. Maybe Teresa, you know the answer, Ms. Jackson, about choir, what she's doing instead of choir.
I believe for choir with Mrs. Crane, is she will be doing some history of choir. I'm not 100% sure. I know that at the high school, Mr. Neal, do you know 100% what Mrs. Crane was going to be doing? I know.
Yeah, they'll be doing some, some book work, like you said, some singing as well. She's our choir at the middle school. She's here fewer times since we only have her for 2 periods throughout the day. So her and Mr. Bowerly, we need to share with the high school as well. So their live sessions will not be as numerous as the core sections, but they will still both have live sessions and asynchronous lessons at both schools.
Yeah, and then details about band as well. Same kind of a thing.
So yeah, I'll jump in. Mr. Bowerly's been working on ways to do, virtual performance and practicing and things like that. So as of now, students are still scheduled for their band and choir classes. It just may look different for a while.
Okay. I think one of the things about choir, one of the obstacles we have is the health department considers choir a super spreader. I think that's the term, a super spreader activity. So that is off the table right now, the traditional choir. So there'll be more to come on that. I did get something from Mr. Cheerhart that we don't oversee the youth sports, so we really don't know the answer to the youth sports question. Sorry. All right, we are at the end of our questions and just about at the end of our time. Thank you everyone for participating and zooming in to the webinar. Any last questions? Let me look. I don't see any. So I want to thank everybody, thank the panelists for spending the time to do this. Not that you guys had a choice, but I appreciate you being here. And thank you very much for your participation and hope to see you all soon. And let's all pray for a return to normalcy. You take care and we'll see you soon. Bye now.